Hi guys, how you doing? My name is Joe Valdez. I'm gonna do a little cooking tutorial here for you. We're gonna make a Bolognese sauce, and then later on I'm gonna teach you how to make a spaghetti bolognese with the same bolognese. And while we're doing this, I'm actually gonna teach you guys my red sauce too, or sometimes referred to as Sunday gravy to real Italians. And you're gonna hear it searing away. So what's gonna happen is, as soon as I add these veggies, all the water from these vegetables, from the carrots and the onion and the celery, is going to help deglaze the bottom of that pan. We're going to start with about a cup, and I'm going to see what it looks like after that. Now you guys will notice that in this bolognese I haven't put any garlic. I'm actually saving that for a nice special spot in this cooking process. And what I actually have is, I have some roasted garlic that I love to add to my bolognese. Now this is garlic that was in my fridge, starting to get a little bit funky. And you know, I really try to use all of my ingredients all the time. Try to never ever waste. So whenever I have garlic that's kind of nearing its end and I don't want to chop it and I don't want to slice it and I don't want to use it in fresh dishes, what I'll do is I'll put however much garlic it is in a small pot, cover that pot with oil, bring it up to a boil, and shut it off. Okay, and what that does, what that essentially is garlic confit. Okay, so this is a nice roasted garlic confit in oil, and then what I do is I strain that off, and either I mash it with a spoon or mash it with my hands or whatever the case may be, and this is what you have here. A good buddy of mine, Chef Evo, taught me this trick a number of years ago, and I've stuck to it ever since, especially when I have garlic that's going out of date. Okay, and I'm going to add this essentially the same time that I add the beef, and it just gives it a lot of great flavor. So gonna make sure we're now you see how much those vegetables have really cooked down, and that's perfect. This wine is cooking down, it's about halfway there. Now I'm going to use this barbecue lighter to make sure that all of the wine is cooked off. Sorry, I guess the air is trying to kill it. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so whenever you're unsure if the alcohol is actually cooked off, use a barbecue lighter or a torch. Make sure that you know, all that alcohol is cooked off, and be careful and mindful of the flame that may come off of it, especially if you're indoors, right? Okay, you don't want to put a whole bunch of brandy or a whole bunch of wine in a pot and light it on fire. That could damage your stovetop or your microwave, your pot. So safety, safety, safety. Okay. So that's about cooked down as far as I'd like it to go. I'm going to add our beef and pork back in. Make sure that everything is nice and incorporated. Okay. We're going to go ahead and add our confit garlic at this point. I'm just going to take maybe a tablespoon and a half in. And yes, I love garlic, so that'll do me great. Okay. Making sure that is nice and mixed in. Oops. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and go with our crushed tomatoes as well. And we're gonna go ahead and go in there too. You know what? I'm just gonna use this whole can. Why not? Now again, I'm going to rinse this out with a little tiny bit of water, making sure I get all that goodness out of there. All right. So we have our garlic confit, we have our pork, we have our beef, we have our pseudo mirepoix. And I don't call it a traditional mirepoix because mirepoix is actually meant to come out of a sauce. But I mean, essentially it's a mirepoix: onions, garlic, celery. We have our tomato paste, we have our red wine, we have our crushed tomatoes. Okay. We are well on our way. Gonna salt this bad boy too. Remember, flavor enhancer. Make sure you know what the salt feels like in your hand. She's already bubbling on me. That's good. Yeah, so I'm still tasting a little bit of acidity from the tomato paste and from the crushed tomatoes, so that's going to cook down. I did my initial first step of salt, okay, and now I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the marinara. We're going to get a lid on it, only about halfway. Okay, maybe more than halfway, but that'll sit right there. And you know, about every half an hour or so I'll come and check on this, making sure that it's not scorching. I'm going to turn it from a medium to a medium low, okay, and check back with you guys here in a minute. Alright guys, so it's been about half an hour or so on our marinara. I have our bolognese going too. Like I said, I'm checking on that every half an hour or so. So you see how much this marinara has reduced. Some of that water that I added has cooked out, and that's great. These onions are nice and soft. Garlic is nice and soft. So I'm going to show you one of two finishing steps to this. Okay, and I have my picked basil right here. Okay, and a lot of chefs, what they'll do is they'll either chiffonade or cut their basil very small in order to put in. Yeah, sometimes I don't have time for that, so I'm just going to go basil straight in, and it is pretty basil heavy. I like garlic heavy marinara, basil heavy marinara. And at this time, sometimes when my basil is getting a little older, I'll get it in there too. Because essentially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blend all of this up. Okay. At this time, I am going to add a little bit of extra virgin too. Not too much, just a little bit. Because we still have to cook this a little while longer. Okay, and now I have one of my fancy tools that I love to use. This is my hand immersion blender. Essentially, this is going to go straight in the pot, and it's going to blend everything up nice and well. If you guys watch my pomodoro video, you guys will know that I add fresh basil to almost all of my red sauces. So when I blend this down, I don't really mind that there's no real basil showing, because I am going to add fresh basil later on. I'm going to turn this down while I go to blend it. Alright guys, so I've got my immersion blender plugged in. Now this is the very dangerous part, okay? And you always want to make sure that it's nice and clean. I want to make sure that it's running before I go ahead and stick it in. I'm going to go ahead and put it in here. It's on its lowest setting. Okay, and I'm just going to push it all the way down to the bottom. Go ahead and get started. Little by little. Hold on to my pot right here so I don't lose it. I'm just going to start at the bottom, nice and gentle. Now that blade from the hand immersion blender is pulling all those onions in. There's pulling those cooked down tomatoes, the garlic. You see all the basil still on top. That's fine. This isn't too much of a process, but I'll tell you what, it's a lot better process than pulling some of this marinara out, putting it in a blender, working it in batches. Okay, this little immersion blender for stovetop use is beautiful. It's great. I use it for a lot of other things too, like making sauces, whipping eggs, all sorts of things. So yes, I'm still on the bottom, but I'm gonna slowly rotate towards the top. Oh, I already messed up. Slowly rotate towards the top. Making sure I have all those big chunks of tomato already blended down. Okay, now I'm going to turn it up to its higher setting. And just make sure that get all those chunks, get all that nice basil. Every once in a while I like to see where I'm at, lift it up. Sorry, bring a little of that basil down. We're just about there. So at this time, gonna make sure that I have enough salt. This still needs probably about another half an hour of cooking or so. But with my spoon, I'm gonna make sure there's no garlic or no onions or tomato. Alright guys, so this needs about another half an hour, maybe 20 minutes of cooking. I had it off when I did the blending. I'm gonna turn it back up to a medium. So at this time, I'm gonna make sure that my salt levels are good. Again, taste, 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 always tasting. Yeah, so you still have a nice acidity from those tomatoes. So add just a tiny bit more salt at this time. Again, making sure that you're feeling for the salt, tasting for the salt. I did add that little bit of extra virgin olive oil along with the basil. Okay, about 20 more minutes. This will be ready. So we're gonna change gears and check on our bolognese again. So while I'm moving this around, I can kind of feel the heat's a little too high, and I noticed that by the sound it makes when I scrape the bottom a little bit. If it sounds violent at all, it's too hot. Okay, so you just always want to be constantly listening, stirring. So I did turn it down. It's about a low now. I did forget to mention a bay leaf or two. There's a bay leaf right there. I do try to take those out a little bit later on. I'm gonna taste this really quick too, making sure that we have enough salt. That's good. It's still a little sweet from the crushed tomatoes, and that just signifies that it still needs a little bit more cooking time. Maybe another hour or so on this on a very low heat. Okay. And once we're done with this, move on to finishing that marinara too. All right, guys. So it's been that last half an hour on our marinara. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a quick stir, making sure that we still have our proper levels of salt. Okay, and then I'm going to show you what I put our marinara in, and try to cool it down rapidly. Okay. Oh yeah, that's perfect. All right. So very carefully, I'm going to take this pot. I'm going to get it into a nice little container that's shallow. Okay, and then I'm going to let it cool at room temperature for probably half an hour. And as soon as that's over, that half an hour is over, I'm going to put it in my fridge uncovered in the coldest part. Okay, because essentially you want to cool this down rapidly so that you avoid creating any bacteria. Okay, and so we still have another maybe hour on our bolognese, and we'll check back in then. All right, guys, so we're finishing up our bolognese here. It's been about 2.5 hours since we started, and you see how far it's cooked down. You see these nice red colors, deep flavor. Okay, before I go ahead and start cooling this down, I'm gonna check it one more time for salt. You know, I always talk about it, salt, 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 keep testing. Yeah, I think that needs a bit more. So remember, this is the third time we've added salt. Okay? So what you're doing essentially is you're building those flavors step by step. All right. All right. That tastes great. You get to taste all those veggies, the pork, the beef. Okay. So again, stove off. Very carefully, I'm gonna get it into this shallow pan right here. And again, I'm going to let it cool at room temperature for this one probably 45 minutes. And remember, I talked earlier about coming out with a clean pan. There's nothing stuck on the bottom of that. It's nice and clean. Okay, I'm using a wooden spoon rather than a spatula. But got all the good stuff out. That'll come away nice and clean. Go ahead and try and take that bay leaf out of there. I think I had one more little one somewhere, but it'll come out. Oh, there we go. It'll come out eventually, I was gonna say. Now, I'm gonna move our bolognese over here to this other counter. All right, guys. So I'm gonna move our bolognese over here to let it cool at room temperature. And I'm going to show you a little trick that a lot of restaurants will use when cooling down items, especially in larger quantities. I'm going to prop this up on an upside down plate. That way there's some airflow underneath this pan on all sides, and it'll help cool it from the bottom and from the top. Okay? And this bolognese needs probably 45 minutes here out at room temperature, and then after that 45 minutes is done, I'll go ahead and put it in my fridge in the coldest part. Uncovered, of course. You don't want to continue steaming it if you wrap it, and then we'll go on using it another time. Alright guys, so we've talked about boiling water and cooking pasta. We are in our final stages of making our spaghetti bolognese. So I'm just going to show you one last time how much salt actually needs to go in a pot of water. This is the last of my iodized salt, and again, this is very fine, very, very salty, but we're just going to go ahead and create a nice salt slurry. And that's it. That's the end of it. So I might just add a little bit more kosher salt to it. Okay. Bring this back up to a boil. We'll go ahead and drop our spaghetti. All right, we're gonna go ahead and fan out our spaghetti. Get this nice al dente. And once this is done cooking, we're gonna go ahead and build this. All right, guys, so I have our spaghetti cooked. We're ready to go. You've seen me grind our beef. You've seen me grind our pork. You've seen me make Sunday gravy or marinara, and you've seen me make our bolognese. So all that's left really is to build the final dish. So here we go. All right, guys, so I've got my pasta pan going, which is just a stainless steel wok with a non-stick surface on it. I've got it kind of warm. Okay, I've got our spaghetti in the sink ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and get a couple big ladles of our bolognese in. And that's about good for the portion that we're going for. Okay, now when I make bolognese, I always love a little bit of marinara. Okay, it adds some freshness. It's got basil in it, right? Our bolognese does not have any basil. Okay, just a little bit like that. And then I do love some butter in mine too. Just about that much, not too much. Okay, it's a nice finisher. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll taste it, making sure that we're good on salt. Now you have to remember the spaghetti that we're going to be putting in here does have some carryover salt from the pasta water. Okay, and if you ever thicken up this bolognese or you thicken up this marinara here on your saute pan, you can always add a little bit of that pasta water. Okay, it's always important to keep that around until maybe you do the dishes after dinner is done. Okay, that pasta water is very important. Okay, wow, that looks really, really good. You can see the basil in it now from the marinara. That butter just made it kind of silky. Just a little bit of finisher. Give it a good taste. Oh, really, really good. No more salt. We are good to go. So this is simmering away. I've got our done spaghetti right here. All right, you guys. And as always, I like to finish my pasta in the sauce. Okay, that way the noodles really soak up that sauce. Okay, and get a lot of great flavor from them. If you like to make your pastas a little more luxurious, like I like to do, I always do a little top of extra virgin olive oil. Okay, because I'm not going to be cooking it for too long, it won't break down. Just gives a lot of great flavor. And remember, we used our beef scraps, we used our pork scraps, we used some canned tomatoes to make our marinara and our bolognese, a little bit of red wine, some fresh herbs and basil, garlic, onion in that marinara, and then we have our somewhat mirepoix with our bolognese. This is just layers and layers and layers of flavor, so I really hope you guys give this a try. You know, thanks for sticking through all of this. Finish with some nice parsley. And that is a luxurious spaghetti bolognese, all scratch made, all made from home. Really hope you guys give it a try.